Coming up, I'm going to share with you what I do when this thing up here doesn't want to draw so much. Let's get to it. Hey everybody, I'm Leigh, and welcome to Grimmleighs Fiends. Normally, what we cover is the spooky cool content that ties us all together as a culture, whether it's from our mythology, our monsters, or even our current media. It could be your movies or your comic books, even the TV shows that we're watching. A lot of times it has that great spooky content that I love and really enjoy sharing with all of you. But sometimes I also like to explore the artistic method. And a lot of times as an illustrator or as a sculptor or a writer or a painter, any of the things that I like to dabble in, you're going to have creative block. And creative block is terrible. Anytime it hits any one of us, it can be one of those things that stops us being productive. And if you're relying on your art or your artistic expression to either make a living or, in my case, just create regular content, those blocks can really get in the way of you doing what you've committed yourself to doing. Now, with Grimmleighs Fiends, I have set myself up with a challenge, if you will, to stick with it and continue making regular content. But what do you do when you sit down to draw or paint or write and your brain just says no? There's a plot hole from season 2 of Bleach that I need to go over. And until we go over that, you get nothing creative. So what I like to do is warm-ups. They're warm-up sketches. And the reason why I do this is, one, you never want to do anything that's any kind of physical exertion. Believe it or not, yes, drawing is physical exertion. There's a lot of muscles in your hands and wrists and your eyes and your brain. Getting all of that to work together is challenging, and it's not something that you should just assume you're going to be able to pick up a pencil and get straight to it. So if I have a particular amount of work that I've blocked out for an evening or an afternoon, I like to sit down with a blank sheet of cardstock. Now, different illustrators do different things. A lot of people use scratch paper because the goal here is not to be precious with it. You're not aiming to keep any of this. This is just a way to wake your brain up and get it working with your muscles. And it's also incredibly good for you. And the reason why that is if you've ever done any physical exertion, if you've ever been involved in any sports, if you've been a track runner or weightlifter, you don't want to just get right to it. You want to warm up first. You want to do some stretches. You want to do some light cardio. Maybe you want to get on the treadmill or your elliptical trainer and just get those muscles warmed up. Because anybody who's ever tried to do like some really strong endurance exercises, if you don't warm up, you could cramp up. And even if you don't cramp up, your execution isn't going to be as good. Your muscles won't be as loose. You won't be able to exert yourself to the same levels that you were hoping to. So the same goes for illustration. I usually set myself a limit of 10 to 15 minutes. Today I got a little excited about what I was working with and ended up going about 20 minutes with this. But again, you're not working on anything in particular. You're just working on something that lets your brain open up, gets those synapses between your brains and your fingers going, and you can do just about anything. I know Jake Parker, who's an illustrator I really admire, he basically sits down and doodles robots, and he'll doodle robots for 10 minutes until his brain is working correctly with his fingers, and you can feel it with your fingers. It's just like any other muscle warm-up. You can feel your fingers getting just a little warmer, a little looser, a little more responsive to what it is that you're trying to get them to do. What I like to do when I'm doing warm-ups is start with something that I enjoy. So a lot of times I'll just draw zombies. I'm not even that huge of a zombie fan. I just like drawing zombies. It's fun. I like to do it because it's a way that you can deal with facial expressions and musculature and skeletal structures all at the same time. And you can peel them away here, peel them away there, do really cool gory effects if you want to, but it also just kind of lets me drift my mental process a little. It's almost meditative. But today, with this exercise, I thought, being as how we're towards the end of August here in 2021, or as I like to call it, halfway through the first month of October because it's a 3-month celebration here in my home. Now that we're partway through the first month of October, it's time to start celebrating the spooky season. So the prompt I gave myself was pumpkin heads. And not necessarily zombie pumpkin heads, although that first one there is definitely a zombie pumpkin head. Well, and so is the third one. But just pumpkin head characters. So I started off with one kind of scraggly looking guy with some ratty shirt sleeves. And you'll notice I'm not really going into too much detail here. I'm just blocking in shapes and having fun with the results. And more than anything, just getting lost in the process, not so much lost in the character. And if something comes to me while I'm scratching out details here, I'm just going to go with it. So my first guy, he just looks like your standard disheveled, well, pantsless zombie guy walking around with a pumpkin head. That's cool. Your second guy kind of looks like a sad kid who got caught in a rainstorm. He's not feeling the greatest. Your third guy, he's got his stripy pants. Looks like he's got some shirt garters. And that just happened. I'm not even sure how it happened. He just all of a sudden had shirt garters. Okay, well, that's what my creative process was looking to do. I can't really question that. Your fourth character in line here, it's like a pumpkin mage. Okay. And she was fun because she just kind of happened. It was, at this point, the brain's directly communicating with my fingers as they've warmed up, so I'm not really in charge of the process anymore. And when I was saying earlier that it's a meditative process, I mean it. It really is a meditative process. You're kind of surrendering your creative flow with this process. You're letting the subconscious part of your brain express itself, and you're just along for the ride. And I really like that. I've always felt that whether it's sketching, warm-up sketching like this, sometimes with miniature painting, I feel this way when I'm painting gaming miniatures. The subconscious mind just kind of does its thing, and it allows you to quiet the conscious mind a little bit, because the conscious mind is busy at this point, but it's got a task. It's got a task that allows you to keep it distracted while you just allow some creativity to come to work. Pirate Pumpkinhead Zombie here. He's kind of a fun one. As I was coming in, the poofy sleeves kind of dictated those rollover cuffed boots. And he's definitely shocked by this whole experience. So there we go. We're only 6-7 minutes in, and we've got 5 pumpkin heads. We're getting ready to do the 6th one. And I was feeling bad for these guys because it's not really a village unless you have some furry companionship. So let's get a new pumpkin head going here. This will be the only really happy pumpkin head out of this batch, because that's just kind of how it is with dogs. They're generally always happy unless they're hungry. Then they're not. But I'm sure I've known some sad dogs in my life, but I like to draw the happy ones. They make me happy. So there you go. There's your happy puppy. It's important in so many other ways too that you allow this warm-up process to just happen. Now, normally this would be about the point where I'd stop. I've got 5 or 6 little squiggles here, and you get to this point where you can say, okay, do I have something that I want to go with? Did I actually not pay attention to my own directive? And did I start creating something that I might want to flesh out? Because some of these designs are kind of cool. Maybe I want to branch out and see if that's a design I want to work on later. And that's cool, because that tells me the creative process told me that's what we're doing here if we create something fun. Otherwise, this stuff is great just to either put in a sketchbook or put in a folder or even throw away. Again, you're not here to be precious with this process. You're here to exercise your fingers and get your brain woken up. It's like sending a signal to your synapses that says, okay, F-Boy Island time is over. It's sketching time. I hope none of you watched F-Boy Island. It's just not good for you. You'll have to do even more warm-ups if you do that because your brain has turned to mush. But I'm not going to judge you for that, friends. I'm just going to ask you to watch better media. Spend a better use of your time. Watch more Grimmleighs videos. That'll be good for you. It's at least creative. Anyway, back to the process here. About this point, there's a little more creative work going on. I got excited about the pumpkin heads. I was having so much fun with the sketches up above that I'm afraid I'm not in warm-up mode anymore, which is fine. I'm already warmed up. But I started thinking about those old 18th century clowns. I don't know if you've seen a lot of 18th century clowns, but the makeup on them is, the Pagliacci type stuff. It's really disturbing, but the contrast in the costume, the black and white stripes and the ruffles is really, really cool. So, all right, here we go. We've got ourselves a pumpkinhead clown. I love this guy. I'm having a lot of fun with this guy. So this might be something that I end up expanding on for a future project because design-wise, he's a lot of fun. I can do a lot with him. And I'll give him kind of more of a wistful look. And the other part of giving yourself a prescribed challenge, a predetermined challenge with your warm-ups is, say I decided that I was going to do scarecrows with this. You put scarecrow heads on each and every one of these guys, and they're all completely different. Even with the bodies staying the same, I would still have a completely different experience if I went with scarecrows or if I went with zombie cyborgs. Even with that kind of a prompt for the warm-up exercise, I would get a completely different outcome with it, which I love. But also maybe don't stick to the same to the same designs each and every time you do something like this. So at this point, I decided to start challenging myself with things that I haven't done before. It's something that you'll hear me talk about quite a bit when I talk about the art process, is that you have to challenge yourself. You have to keep things fresh in your head and not revert to the same old process. And I've probably told the story on this channel before, but my 7th grade advanced art teacher, I remember turning in my weekly sketchbook assignment because his thing was you had to have 2 fresh sketchbook pages in your sketchbook every day, not every day, every week, every Friday when you turned in your sketchbooks. You had to have 2 fresh sketches in there every single week. And sometimes he'd give you prompts, sometimes he wouldn't, but still, the task was, in order to keep a passing grade in his class, you had to have 2 brand new pages in your sketchbook. And each and every week, this poor guy would get my sketchbook, which would be filled with either X-Men or ROM Space Knight, or being as how Frank Miller had just done his solo Wolverine story. I was obsessed with ninjas at this point, as every kid in the early 80s was. So after I think the 40th drawing of either Wolverine or Cyclops or sometimes Daredevil, occasionally a Jedi or a Sith, or whatever, fighting ninjas, there was a little note saying, this is all well and good, but how about a grasshopper? And so I got a little ticked off, a little hot under the collar, because I was the best artist in the world. Just ask me. I would tell you at that point that there was nothing that was going to stop me. And who is this guy, this established illustrator? This guy who actually had some commercial work done in the 70s and early 80s. He knew what he was talking about. He was actually giving me a legitimate prompt. He was telling me to push myself and go outside my comfort zone. Stop drawing my comfort ninjas and my comfort mutants. He wanted me to draw a grasshopper. And so I went home and, being this is pre-internet, I went through every magazine I had to find pictures of grasshoppers, finally found some in the encyclopedia, and I drew some grasshoppers. And I filled up 2 entire pages of my sketchbook with grasshoppers. And then, to spite my art teacher, I then drew ninja masks on them and gave them punch daggers and shuriken darts or shuriken stars and all kinds of weapons. They had katana because, they had obviously fought some samurai grasshoppers at some point, and I turned that in, and he gave me a good grade on it because I at least had followed the prompt. But I always felt like I cheated myself there because, sure, I drew the grasshoppers, but he was really trying to challenge me to push myself outside of my norms. He was pushing me to push myself to try something new instead of, just endlessly emulating John Byrne and Walt Simonson. Those were the two illustrators that I was obsessed with at the time. So now here I am, a couple decades later, really wishing that I had listened to the sage advice of my 7th grade art teacher. He had some good points there, and I really should have listened. I had the same thing in high school, where I'd had another art teacher who, and I know I've talked about this before, he was challenging me to draw commercial appliances, and I was like, no, I draw Ninja. John Byrne wouldn't draw a vacuum cleaner, damn it. So anyway, I shorted myself with that. So now I try to push myself. I've never drawn in my life a conjoined twin. I've never drawn even fantasy conjoined characters like Etten. If you get into your fantasy D&D characters, I've never drawn a two-headed troll or an Etten or anybody that was conjoined in any way. So here we have our conjoined strongmen from the circus, and I really dig those guys. They're a lot of fun too. So now we've got 2 characters that I feel like I'm probably going to end up expanding. Now this will be a recurring theme anytime you see warm-ups. And if you like these warm-ups, let me know, and I'll actually start posting warm-ups every week because they can be a lot of fun to watch. They're definitely a lot of fun to do. I have a character that came up in a story that I wrote for my kids. It was called Pixie Pirate. And Pixie was the most tyrannical pirate on the 7 seas, and she had a phantom butler. And the phantom butler would always attend to her needs on her ship. And he was just a guy with no legs, got like spectral ghost form underneath his tuxedo. And for some reason, almost every single time I draw warm-ups, the phantom butler ends up showing up. So here he is in all of his glory with his serving tray, the phantom butler. I don't know why he always comes out, but he's a fun character to draw. It's a very thin, ethereal character. And the roots of the Phantom Butler, strangely enough, are shared with another character that will be being debuted here in October that I've been threatening to unleash on the world for a good 10 years now. Very similar body type, and I'm also really excited because after 7 or 8 years of dream casting this other character, I finally found the actor that I'm going to be basing most of the character design of this other character off of. So you'll see all of that in October of 2021. I'm really excited to show that. So there he is, the Phantom Butler as a Pumpkinhead character. I still don't know why he always shows up. I love drawing pumpkins though, because they can be any shape, right? You can do just about anything with them. They don't have to be precise. They don't have to be those perfect cast gourds like the plastic pumpkins that you used to carry around and get your candy when you were a kid. You can make them all kinds of shapes, and even those shapes themselves can convey so much emotion. Like this guy here, his head's a little flatter. He doesn't have the longer, more elongated head like the pumpkin clown does, right? He's a little stouter, and I wasn't sure where it was going, so I just kind of let the creative process take over here, and I really love where it went. He's got some fun. He's got a fun story that you can just look at him as he's emerging. It's got a fun story. It unfolds for you as the process is going on. So there's just that one wooden sword, and all of a sudden I have the beginnings of a pumpkin night. And literally up until this point, right when that sword came in, I wasn't really sure where this drawing was going. And instead you get this cool animated suit of armor with a pumpkin head on it. And that's why warm-ups are so cool. I mean, yeah, I may not use any of these guys. This, again, could go in the trash. I don't think it's going to go in the trash. It's probably just going to go in a sketchbook. But it could also end up being something that I do for this week's live stream, is just sitting down and throwing some inks on these guys and throwing some color in there and seeing where that goes too, because there's some really fun character design going on here. So now we've got a pumpkin-headed knight, and I don't actually, I only drew this a few hours ago. I don't remember this part of the process, which means I was pretty far in my subconscious at that point. So yay me, I did my warm-ups right. I should get a cookie for this. What do you think of warm-ups? Are you a regular illustrator, or are you somebody that is routinely facing creative block, which will hit anybody who's doing anything creative? I know if you're a writer, sitting down to write something doesn't mean that it's going to come out for you. I've always considered for writers that journaling is like the warm-up of writing, of getting those creative juices going. Just sitting down and writing some points in your journal and connecting the storytelling part of your brain to your hands. That seems like the same thing. I'm not as much a writer as I am an illustrator, but I do quite a bit of writing. So that's, but it's the same thing for me. I have the stories. I don't actually have to sit down and think too much about the stories that I'm creating for my characters, because they come to me while I'm drawing the characters. I already know this Pumpkin Knight. I already know his story. His story came together in my head while I was drawing him, and I can think of a whole bunch of stories with him. So there you go. 10 new characters. I'm the spooky glare in the glasses guy. What do you think of this kind of video? If you'd like to see more of the warm-ups that I do every week when I do my drawings, I'd be happy to share them with you folks. Otherwise, make sure to tune in on Tuesday nights. We have a live stream that goes from 7 p.m. Mountain Time and generally lasts about an hour. We'll talk to anybody who is on the live chat. And we'll also be posting brand new content every Thursday night, and that will be either monsters or creatures from movies. It could even be about the design process. A lot of times we'll be tackling some characters from myths and legends. And then once a month, I will release a unique illustrated story from the world of Grimmleighs Fiends. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. If you like what we're doing here, please give us a like and subscribe. The best is yet to come.